Mickey, good morning. Thanks for joining us. As a starting point, can you tell us who you are and what you do, please?
Yeah, sure. Good morning. Thanks for inviting me. I'm Mickey Kalifa. And what do I do? As a profession, I am the CFO of a pretty large marketing services, tech services company, private equity owned, and it keeps me very, very busy.
Brilliant.
How did you get there? Tell us your journey from your career.
Okay. So I am a chartered accountant. I qualified with what is now PwC. It was Coopers and Lybrand at the time. And I kind of, for a long time, had a sort of tried and tested route to being a finance director, CFO, for a long time. I had a slight meandering along the way where I took a slightly different route. I did my own thing. I became a managing director of a technology company, and then I got back into finance and being CFO. So the route is, and tell me if I'm taking too long explaining it or being too short in explaining it. But I have been with my present company. It's called Debt. It's owned by Carlyle predominantly. And prior to that, I was CFO of a public company called M&C Saatchi. And I was there for a few years. And it was a thoroughly enjoyable time in many ways. I'll explain in a second why it was also a thoroughly miserable time at points in time. But all in all, I really enjoyed it. I really do have fond feelings for that company. It was a public company, is a public company. And I joined that company having met the founders in the sort of the interview preliminary process. And it was, I sort of fell in love with the business. I thought they were great people, and they are great people. And they had high hopes and high ambitions for what was already a really well-established business. If anyone in the UK at least was to ask anyone in the UK, can you name one advertising agency, just one? Mm-hmm. 9 times out of 10, they're going to mention the word Saatchi. So it was a huge brand, huge reputation. Anyway, I went into the company. Long story short, the CFO at the time was just leaving, and he handed me the glorious task of managing an audit with KPMG, just as I literally walking through the door, which was a bit weird to be, even when at the time I thought it was a bit unusual for someone who's got no knowledge of a business to basically manage an audit. Anyway, I did. The audit took much longer than it was supposed to take. We passed. It was fine in the end. I mean, it was a little bit shambolic, if I confess, but the auditors, KPMG, said it was okay. But it wasn't okay. I could see that there were all sorts of issues that needed to be sorted out. And we undertook a review. I started a review of the business and the financials, and it was obvious that the numbers that were presented to the auditors needed further review. They weren't necessarily what they seemed. And after a long period of review, we found really extensive financial errors, really extensive. It's the public record. The scale of those misstatements, they were running into tens of millions. Long story short, it all came out in the wash. We got PwC to come in and help us with a review, and they did. It was and they found a lot, and we found collectively a lot of overstated profits, really significantly overstated profits. So it was a far cry from what I came in thinking I was going to do. But having said that, and this was all whilst COVID was just kicking off and happening, it was horrible. But we found it, and if you look at where M&C Saatchi is today, it's a pretty solid company. It's back to kind of almost where it was before, and it's very well respected. I'll take some of the credit for getting it back to where it is now.
not what you signed up for initially. We speak to a few CFOs on our journey who've said, yeah, I've joined a business. This isn't what I was sold. I've got under the hood. I did as much due diligence as I could, but equally I've landed in it's not what it seems. In that moment then, how did you feel? And then what do you do?
Yeah, well, first of all, nobody knew. I think it wasn't some kind of fraud that was masterminded by anybody. It was just bad management, okay, and it wasn't deliberate. It kind of was bad habits snowballing ultimately into an avalanche, and so there's no one to blame directly. It wasn't kind of like that. And as I said at the start of this point, I have so much respect for the leaders. They had created an amazing business, the founders of that business. So I always had them to fall back on, and they were very sympathetic to kind of the effort that was being put in to fix the problem. So they were always a good counsel. So there's no blame. I didn't kind of feel like that. But there were moments where I thought, in the middle of COVID, on my own with a small team, spending hours and hours and hours in a room trying to sort things out, day after day, month after month. What the hell am I doing this for? There was one moment, I think there was a slight break in where you could actually go into the office, and it's a beautiful office in Soho, in Golden Square. It's a landmark building. I walked out of the office one day, it's a huge office, and I thought, there's like 3,500, 4,000 people in the company. And I did feel the weight of the world, the weight of the company was on and the weight of their futures was on my shoulders. I literally felt, I can't walk out on this because there's so many people whose livelihoods are dependent on this coming through. Because if it didn't, we weren't ever going to go bankrupt, but we could have got acquired for next to nothing. And at that point, God only knows what would have happened to the business. So I did feel a moral sense of compulsion to see it through. And although that wasn't what I signed up for, I realised that's kind of what I have to do. I didn't even think about kind of at that point running anywhere. Just thought this is what I have to do. It's painful. My wife never forgave me for spending that much time on the business. She still to this day sort of refers to it, but it was just, I don't know, not even loyalty. It was just, there isn't. If I can't do this, this company's in trouble. It literally was that sense. If I don't fix this, this is a big problem for a lot of people. And the good news is there is some good news. Very personally, I somehow, luckily, it was pure luck, got a bit of a good reputation because of that. It was pure luck. I got my name in the papers. Luck, I wouldn't call that luck. I didn't want my name to be in the papers, but I did. There was a headline in one of the papers. It was quite funny. And when I left, I'll tell you what the headline was in a minute, and it will bring in something else. And when I left, I was given a few leaving gifts. One of those leaving gifts was a football shirt. I support Tottenham, and at the back of the shirt was the two-word headline associated with me, the Saviour. So I've got whatever it was, number one, the Saviour, on the back of my Tottenham shirt. Anyway, so it's a great company. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. Despite the kind of the issues, the huge issues that I faced.
Before we started recording, you described yourselves as a commercial CFO. Like, it feels to me like that role was very nuts and bolts, though. If you're kind of looking at the audit and audit failures, that probably wasn't even really within your wheelhouse or your comfort zone. So that must have been a big challenge for you as well.
Yeah, it really was. It was deep accounting. It was really kind of heavy duty financial accounting. And in a million years, I would never, ever describe myself as that kind of finance person. In a million years. And no one would either. No one. But we hired some really good people. we had some really good people. Let's be honest. We obviously had some appalling people, being really direct, because they created this problem in the first place. They obviously left. But with a really strong team and a really dedicated team, we got there. And I'd almost say that sweat outweighs kind of intellect at this point in time. You just had to get through this painful process of unraveling everything. And at the end of the day, it was just a really painful, but nonetheless not intellectually impossible process. It did require some thought, because there were concepts, financial concepts that I was having to learn afresh, as were the team. But we got there. I mean, it wasn't easy. We got our PwC were not easy on us. They were a pain in the arse, to be honest. But that's their job. But we got there. But so it's not in my wheelhouse, as you say. But needs must. Would I want to do this again? No, never. I don't want to sort of go through that level of detail ever again.
And was that, you said about the reputation from getting in the papers, obviously got some positivity out of that. I guess it set the tone for what was to come next and for you securing future opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't kind of deliberately manipulate it or even leverage it. It just happens. I mean, I guess you know the world that you operate in. You'll read things, you'll see names, and you'll react to that. You think, I must get in touch with that person in your profession. And I guess that's what happened and is happening. People even 3-4 years on still carry that kind of label, and therefore it's quite helpful. It's quite handy. It wasn't something that I courted, didn't go after. It's just when you get there, you sort of get there. Even to this day, people I haven't spoken to for 20 more years, whom I qualified with and who I don't speak to, sort of get in touch and say, "Oh, we saw your name. We read about you." Anyway, I don't want to sort of label that point. It's just one of those things.
I bet there's an executive search consultant out there that appointed you in that role, or is still riding off that wave as well, saying, "Look at this, I hired Mickey Kalifa into M&C Saatchi." Probably.
Who knows? I don't know. I wouldn't. If they know me well enough, they'd stop that. Yeah.
And what else would you say? Obviously, the last few years have had many crises. COVID. Obviously, you had an internal one there. And it seems to be, for a CFO, a modern CFO, that crisis management has got to be in your toolkit. What do you say to other CFOs out there for future crises that they may encounter? Obviously, there are many different ones, but in terms of you as a person and as a character and as a leader, what advice do you have for them in terms of navigating crises?
I suppose it depends on the company that you are part of and the organisation within that company. But my experience is, as a CFO or any C-suite, probably CFO and CEO in particular, generally, in my experience, it's a unforgiving role. You have to work hard. This is purely my experience. There may be companies out there for which it's a breeze. I don't know. I haven't seen one of those. But and it may just be my personality as well, but it's always on. It doesn't ever stop. It doesn't switch off. Friday at 5:00, it might as well be Monday at 9:00. Saturday at in the afternoon, Sunday in the afternoon. It's kind of there. It may just be my personality, but I think the role of a CFO in many organisations, it's very hard for me, and I think it's probably hard for anyone to switch off when there's so much going on. Whether it's crisis, as in not such good news, or whether sales are going through the roof and you have to manage them. You can't kind of just say, I'll deal with it on a Monday. I'll deal with it, Monday afternoon. I think it'd be amazing if there are people out there who can literally switch off when everybody's clocked off. but I find that really hard, and I think most people would. And I think I think it's a requirement. Actually, it's a horrible thing to say. I wish you could switch off. I mean, I'll digress a little bit. Some thought came to mind there. I read so many things on LinkedIn of people who kind of laud working 16-hour days. The summer's just finished. These people who've not taken any holiday, or who did take a holiday and said, I'm a champion because I worked every day of my holiday. I think that's nuts. I think that's crazy that people think that's an accomplishment. But they do, and I feel sometimes that's kind of the role of a CFO sometimes. You're always on. It's always there. You can never switch off. Switch your phone off for 2 weeks. I would like to, if you're on holiday, but I don't think it's possible. I don't. But it boils back to the nature of the company. But I don't think there are many companies out there that allow you to do that. And if they do, when you come back after 2 weeks, or when you come back on a Monday morning, perhaps you're at a disadvantage. I don't know. You tell me, because you see far more variety in CFOs than I do. But that's kind of how I operate.
Yeah, I think in the level and scale and complexity of the organisations that you've operated in, I think that's the job, isn't it? And I think a lot of aspiring CFOs who want, maybe the title or the recognition or whatever it is in their career, maybe are not fully aware of that, or maybe they are because they've seen bosses of theirs. And I was actually speaking to someone the other day who said, look, I'm very happy being a number two. There's no way I want to be a CFO. I've seen what all of my bosses do. No thanks. I like some work-life balance.
Yeah. But having said that, no person is an island, right? I can't just be an island. I can't just do this myself. And so whilst you are right, I hear that as well. I'm quite happy being a number two. But even the number twos, even the people I work with most closely, unfortunately sometimes, and they're really nice people and they're really understanding, and they have young families, but they're still, Mickey, it's 10 o'clock at night and we're having a call because we've got a board meeting tomorrow, or it's a Saturday or a Sunday and we're still. So there is, it's not just me it's not just the CFO that does this. Mm-hmm. It filters through the whole organisation.
But you don't have to do it.
No, you don't. I enjoy it.
So there must be a reason why you do it.
I enjoy it. I mean, sometimes. I definitely don't. I definitely don't enjoy it all the time. But there is a bit of a kick. There is a bit of a thrill to doing this. Is, I suppose, deep down, there's probably an ego thing going on as well, right? I never really analysed it like that, but probably if you're not in it, particularly in the kind of work that I do, where you have to sit in front of the board very regularly, if you don't want to do that, then you're in the wrong job, right? And you should get out because it can be terrible for your health if you hate that kind of approach of having to answer to people, being questioned, grilled sometimes. But it's a challenge, just like, people rise to all sorts of challenges. This is maybe a challenge that I enjoy and I rise to, and fellow CFOs.
What is it that do you think drives you to rise to that? I think you said it when we were talking earlier there, you said about M&C Saatchi and that sense of responsibility for the 3,000 people. Is it because you like helping people? What is it that makes you take that call at 11 o'clock at night rather than just ignoring it? Or, what underpins it in your character, do you think? The bit about my character we can come on to. But it's first of all, it's part of the job, right? In that if I go into a meeting, if there's a board meeting and I'm not prepared or the team's not prepared, then it's going to reflect on the whole organisation, not just me, on everybody, but more particularly me. So just from a personal point of view, probably it goes to the point of the question of my character. I don't want to look stupid. Mm-hmm. I don't know who likes looking stupid. So that's a fear of failure, do you think?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
of course. Yeah. As opposed to the opposite emotion, which is the joy of being a hero. This is the opposite, isn't it? You don't want to look like an idiot, and you don't want to fail.
Is that why that title of the Saviour maybe made you feel a bit uncomfortable, because you kind of...
I laughed, I chuckled, because it was kind of, I mean, I actually don't think I've got that big an ego, so I just think it's quite funny.
Yeah.
And I mean, that shirt, by the way, is buried in the back of my cupboard somewhere. God only knows where it is.
Your wife didn't frame that then?
My son might be wearing it, I don't know. No, she didn't frame it. She didn't burn it. No, that just makes me laugh. That thing is not. It's just it's an anecdote rather than a badge of honour.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything else about your character that you would say has made you a successful CFO, or how would you describe those traits?
I mean, this is getting really deep now. My background, I am not. What's formed my character is undoubtedly, it's diluted as I've got older, but undoubtedly it's my background, no question about it. I mean, I've never had an analyst analyse me, but I reckon if I was really honest, this is what they'd say, or they'd find, and that is I wasn't born in the UK. You can see I'm not 100% English, not even 1% English. In my DNA. I was born in India, in Bombay, and my parents moved here when I was 2. So, to all intents and purposes, I am a grown up here, and I am English in every sense apart from the place of birth. And I grew up in southeast London, sort of northwest Kent, southeast London. In the 70s, you can look at the history books. It was a pretty rough time back then to not be white, and I probably got I got some resolve from the kind of what was going on at the time. It was quite a racist society, particularly down where I lived, and I got resilient. I fought back. Physically, I'm not the biggest person in the world, so I never really won any of those fights, but I certainly did fight back. And as I got older, as I went to university, I said, I'm not taking this shit anymore. In my head, I would have said that. And just resolved to be the best person I could be, to improperly, deep down to say, anyone that sort of doubted me, anyone that abused me, that they can look back now and say, Christ, this guy's not the same guy we thought when he was a kid. And it was that sort of chip on my shoulder, or that flame, whatever you want to call it, that kept me going for a long, long, long time. I've lost it now. I've moved. I don't see any of that anymore, and I ask my children, they don't see any of that, really. I mean, they might. Obviously, we all know what's happened over the summer in this country with the riots, etc. It's not gone, but I don't see it. But it did drive me. So it did drive me to do what I've done. It definitely did. Whether I wake up in the morning and think about that, whether I ever woke up in the morning and said, because of my past, this is what I'm going to do today. No, I never thought. But deep down, these things motivate you, I'm sure, and that did. But I'm not convinced it does anymore.
Did you feel any of that earlier on in your career?
Yeah. When
you were at, what was PwC or?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I didn't feel the kind of. I mean, let me just be direct. The abuse that I would have got as a 12-year-old or a 14-year-old by idiots at school. That didn't happen when I was 21, 22 at PwC. That never happened, of course not. That had moved on. But you carry that, don't you? You carry that kind of with you, and it just continued to spur me on for a period of time.
But you never saw it as a blocker in your career, as such.
Probably I did, but that's and I I think it's getting quite. I'm sure I used to think someone somewhere is looking at me differently from the other person. Whether that was true or not, who knows? And it probably wasn't true. my wife didn't grow up in this country, and she has always said to me, and she never really understood the kind of things that I've just described. She just never saw that, and just sort of therefore didn't really believe it could ever have happened. But do I actually think that not being white was a blocker to my career? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I did it once upon a time when I was a lot younger. Do I believe it now? I don't know. I honestly don't know.
It's funny how that experience you had when you were younger, which was clearly awful and the hardest part of your life, ironically is the thing that's probably made you the successful person you are today. One of
the main reasons, yeah, I'm sure. And again, it's just, this is self-analysis. And someone, a proper analyst, might say differently, but I do use that as a cause for the person I am today. Yeah, but I think it's true.
Do you think, because obviously we've all got kids, right? That resilience and kind of grit is really important, but it's also quite hard to artificially create it, isn't it? But it's also something that makes us really successful.
Yeah. I mean, this is really a different way of looking at it. But some of the best people I've ever worked with are, in a very different way, have got grit from a different way. You know, they are athletes. Literally, they are athletes. And I look at them. They work with me, and they work so hard. And I put it down to the fact that they used to work. They've got something in them that says, I'm going to go through that pain. I'm going to work 12 hours, 14 hours, 16 hours. I'm going to work the whole weekend to get something done. And there's something in people like that. I haven't got any motivation to do a triathlon or anything like that. But I do see there is something. People have something in them that drives them. In me, it might be what I've just said about my background. And in others, it just might be some other thing that drives them.
There's a lot of talk these days about how, and maybe this always happens through history, the current generation, Gen Z or whatever, the new ones, that a lot of them don't necessarily have some of the things we've just discussed. What's your experience been of that?
I think it's unfair, really.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's fair for me to sort of generalize that anyone that's 20 years, 15 years younger than me or more hasn't got that. I don't know if that's I honestly don't know if that's true. I'd like to say it's not true, and I'm sure every generation has always said this.
Yeah.
I'm sure, and I don't think that's true. I mean, there are definitely different motivations and aspirations of people who are in that generation, but it doesn't make them less driven. And some of the people I work with, so at Dept, where I worked with today, I'm definitely one of the older. I'm not going to quite say I'm the oldest, but that probably is true. I'm one of the older people at Dept. It's a marketing tech company. And I've just come from the office earlier, and in London we have offices all over. But and this is probably not true, but I always think the average age of a person working in my office is 25. But the conversations I have with some of them are incredibly motivating. The drive that they have, the ambition that they have, not about making money or something, but about being really successful in what they do, is no different. I'd say it's stronger than any conversation I would ever have had as a 25-year-old. So in many ways, I think it's a sort of a falsehood to suggest that anyone from Gen Z or millennial is just is less driven or less motivated or less ambitious. I don't think so. I doubt it.
Yeah. We obviously discussed you come from a slightly less traditional route to being a CFO. What advice do you have for aspiring CFOs in the future, in particular ones that are maybe sort of -1 at the moment and looking to get to that
Well, I was lucky, right? It wasn't a planned diversion, if you like, of my career. What happened was this. I was really lucky. I used to work for Sky. This was ages ago, and I was finance director for their joint ventures business. This was ages ago, right? And there was a business plan that was being looked at as part of that never happened. But I essentially became the finance director for the business for which I was planning, and it got huge amounts of financial backing. It was a cable and satellite platform for Eastern Europe, for Poland, and I didn't necessarily know what I was doing, but I took the opportunity. I took that job offer, and it was kind of .com boom time and bubble time, and this thing just went. It blew up into an enormous thing. It went wild in a very, very short space of time. And I did okay out of it. Not life-changing okay, but okay, really okay. For a pretty young person, it was kind of, wow, this is amazing. If you can just spend a couple of years building a business like this and sell it, and then that just gave me the opportunity to think, I can do anything. It sort of took that kind of pressure of being an accountant or a finance person away. I don't have to do this anymore if I don't want to. And look, the world's massive. And it was kind of .com craziness time. So I did look at all of these opportunities, and I ended up working for a way ahead of its time company as a business development director. It became really big. It became basically Hong Kong Telecom, so it was really, really big. I really enjoyed it. None of us knew what we were doing at the time. None of us did, no matter what anyone says. And then I became managing director of another really interesting technology business, which was at the sort of forefront of technology at the time in the early 2000s, interactive TV. No one uses interactive TV anymore, the red button. It was the world's biggest interactive TV company. It was pretty big at the time, and I was the European MD. And so it just gave that sort of the financial freedom of not having to worry about, or the fact that I did it once, I was quite successful, meant I felt confident to do other things. And that was the divergence that I'm talking about. So it was luck. It wasn't planned. It was just, I just had a bit of confidence. I went out there and said to people, I can do this, I can do that. I'm not a finance director necessarily, only. I can do anything, and that's what I did. So I don't know. I don't know how one would do that today if you don't. I just had some external thing make it easy for me to do, to go out and do something different.
But you make your own luck to an extent as well, don't you?
Yeah, but I was also in the right place at the right time. I mean, honestly, I was. I mean, it could have been anyone there. I mean, yes, I worked hard, but it could have been anyone. And I was fortunate. And, you know, I think it's true that some of the most successful people, financially successful people in the world, they obviously deserve it, but there's a huge amount of luck that goes along with that as well.
Why did you find your way back to finance?
Yeah, so I spent a long time, I overstayed my welcome in interactive TV because it didn't quite materialise, and I could see the writing on the wall 2 years before I decided to do something about it. And then I carried on doing my own thing. And one of the things that I did was start a social network. This was in the late 2000s, 2006-07. A football-based social network called Fan Banter. I was one of the founders of that, and it got quite big. It was a football forum. I'm simplifying it, where fans of opposing teams could basically do what the hell they like with each other.
Tottenham and Arsenal, for example.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. And they could say what they like, totally uncensored, and get away with it because it was fine. And we built it. We even got a television show on Channel 4 off the back of it. It was ridiculous. It was called Fan Band, so they literally were promoting us for free on Channel 4. So we had all these people showing up, Z-list celebrities usually, helping us along the way. And we couldn't make any money out of it, but it was big. And so we put a little kind of betting app into it. And that kind of solicited some interest from gaming companies. And one of which was interested. Long story short, I ended up working for them, initially as a consultant, then as corporate development, as a public company, and then as a CFO. It wasn't like I sat down in a dark room and said, this is what I want to do. It just sort of happened. It was only in the last 10 years where I've begun to sort of be much more focused and sharp about what I want to do. But for a good period of time, in my middle years, if you like, it just sort of, there was lots of kind of, it wasn't, I wouldn't even call it opportunism. It was just things would happen, and I thought they were great things to do, so I did them.
Is that an itch that you kind of had to scratch doing something for yourself, or is it something you kind of always wanted to do and would think about doing again in the future?
It was definitely something I wanted to do, definitely. I'm sure loads of people that you know are fascinated by entrepreneurialism and fascinated by the stories they read of successes and failures, how people got there, how people didn't get there. And I was equally fascinated by it. And I'm still interested in it, but perhaps less starry-eyed about it than I was in those middle years. And if you want to call it an itch, it could have been an itch. Would I do it again? Possibly. Yeah. I mean, but it's not as fascinating. It is still fascinating, but it's not as much of an urge as it once was. But whatever it is I do, I know it will always be at the sort of the more leading edge of entrepreneurialism in a sort of, in my role. I'll never do something that's just keeping the thing going from one day to the next. Definitely not. That's not me.
One question we get asked a lot by people we speak to is the difference between being a CFO in a public company and being a CFO in a private equity-backed company. And also we have a lot of people wanting to make that transition, but are often blocked or feel blocked because they don't have the chicken and egg experience of working with private equity before. Two things there. Be good to get your thoughts.
I think, first of all, a public company, all of them are, well, one of the starkest differences is there's much more, as a CFO and as a company, there's much more governance type work associated with being a public company, in my experience. And it isn't all, so that governance is not about being forward-looking. It's not about planning for the future. It's about making sure that there are rules, there are regulations, there are processes that are required that get adhered to, that are followed. And sometimes, it's very honestly, anyone who's honest would say this, sometimes those processes they may be necessary, I question sometimes whether they are, but they are necessary, if they are necessary. They're not about advancement of the business, but they are about ensuring that rules and procedures are met. That's quite a difference, and that's important. The governance is important. You've got shareholders who don't necessarily know huge amounts about your business. It's not like private equity where they're in every day. They know every single little number. These are people that rely on me as a CFO or CEO to make sure that we're being honest. And so those rules are there for good reason, because we can't deviate from that path. And so that's a big one. In public, as a CFO in a public company, you obviously, not necessarily obviously, but in my experience, you meet large numbers of different shareholders frequently. Once, every time there's a trading update. Whereas in the world of private equity, you meet one set of shareholders. But like I said, that one set of shareholders will know your business really, really, really well. And there's constant communication with those shareholders. Very, very, very regular. Very, very regular. Whereas you just can't do that in a public company. You're not allowed to do it for a start. You can talk to them, but you can't actually tell them anything that you can't tell anyone else. So you can't necessarily share what's going on in the company apart from what's been published. Whereas in the world of private equity, that's obviously very, very different. They know your business extremely well. They know all aspects of the business extremely well, and the job is to keep them as well informed as possible and help drive the strategy. And that's not the case with a public company, which is very much it's unusual for shareholders to drive the strategy. Clearly, they'll have a voice. You'll hear them. You'll be influenced by them. You should be, but it's not. The decision is solely down to management at that point. What's the other difference? I think today, funding maybe. Private equity, even today, it's tough times in the world, but private equity still has balance sheet, still has access to capital, can put capital into businesses. I think right now, public markets are tough, and trying to raise money is tough, and so maybe access to capital is tougher in a public market. I guess it is. I think it is. There will be some exceptions to that, but I'm talking very generally. Other differences, probably related to what I've just said. Ambition, possibly. Many private equity companies are all about M&A, building, and linked to what I've just said about access to capital or limited access to capital in the public markets. For the time being, for right now, for many public companies, it is sort of status quo. It is organic growth. If you can grow, it's organically. And trying to do that with external funds, trying to do that with M&A is probably quite difficult at the moment. But look, there's probably I could go on about the differences. But it sounds and then the one very, very different, big difference I didn't mention is the commerciality of the business and of maybe the CFO's role. I would like to think that I am commercial, and I think that's really important in a PE CFO, many anyway, to think about the future, to think about how you grow, to think about how you maximize that last penny. Whereas maybe in a public company, because there's so many other different priorities, you can't get to that.
Yeah. So assuming you've got those right traits, I think one of the things, as Neil mentioned, people say is, can I make the move between PLC and private equity? Is there anything that should fundamentally stop you? Clearly, in your case, you've made that transition. It's not been an issue for you. Do you think that it's right that like PEs will say, I want someone that's got private equity experience, thank you very much, that's all I'm looking for? Or should they be looking more broadly at maybe people that are coming from a PLC but have just got the right attributes?
It must be the right attributes, because you could have the wrong attributes and already be working in PE. So you've got to, I think if I was in a PE firm, I would be looking at the attributes rather than the company that they are working for and the background of the organisation, the ownership of the organisation that they're working for. I think that would be, if all you did was say, that person has worked for this PE firm, I like that PE firm, I'm going to hire them, then you're going to possibly end up making a mistake. I think it is about, does that person have what I'm looking for to make a success of his role or her role? It has to be that.
Yeah, and it seems of late though that there is an exodus of CFOs from public companies to private. It seems that a lot of publicly listed companies are now having to appoint first-time CFOs in those businesses, promote from within. Partly it is less attractive to be a PLC CFO anymore because you have all of that governance as part of the role, and private equity obviously promises a bit more of a visible journey with potentially an exit at the end.
Yeah, I mean, but it's also important, I think, to anyone and who's never done it before, not to be, the streets aren't necessarily paved with gold, and it is important to be aware of that, because it's very easy to be allured to that shiny future, as you just said. I mean, there's an exit in the future. There probably is. There possibly is, but I'm not sure anyone should. And this is just my philosophy. I'm not sure anyone should be basing their decision on that. That's a really bad way to look at your career, I think, on a hoped for outcome. I think I wouldn't do that. I think.
What would you base it on if and when in the future you're thinking about that, and I'm a CFO thinking about my next role? What should I be thinking about, and what due diligence should I be doing on the company and the people?
Do as much due diligence as you can. Ask as many questions as you can. No one's going to stop you. No one's going to feel negative towards you if you ask a lot of questions. May feel, God, when's this going to stop? But it's good. It's a good quality. It's a good trait. It's an asset, I think, to anyone hearing that the person that they're about to hire is curious, inquisitive, doing lots of due diligence. I think that's a really good quality. So the more, the better. So find out an awful lot about the company. Find out about the work that you'll be doing. Find out about the team that you'll be doing. Are you the sort of person that wants to get their hands dirty, really, really muck in? Is that what the business wants from you? What's the team like? How strong are they? How dependable are they? What does the management, what do the owners want from you? Ask all those questions. And are these the things that you want to do? And if you don't want to do it, then maybe don't do it. And if you do want to do it, do it. Find out the things you want to do, and does that correspond with what you found out independently, not what people are telling you, but independently in your gut. Is this what the job is going to be? I almost would say, don't listen to people. Work it out yourself. Is this the job? You've worked out what you think the job is, and is that the job you want to do? That would be my view of things. It's easier said than done, but I think that's how I look at it.
How important has it been for you to find the right connection with the leaders that you work for?
It's crucial. It's really, chemistry is everything, from all sorts of reasons. Trust, having fun, being listened to, feeling like you've got time with them. If you've got none of that, then it's probably not a great existence, really, is it? Really, you need to have. They've got to be your friends as well. At the end of the day, not people you necessarily have to go out for a drink with, but people that you feel really comfortable spending as much time with as people in your own family, because that's kind of how it sometimes works out. And if you don't have that chemistry, then you probably don't have that much enjoyment in your job. So I think it's really important. And the same goes probably as much, if not more, for the people that you work with who report into you. You've got to feel that same chemistry, and they've got to feel that towards you. You've got to give that chemistry back. Otherwise, you're not operating on full capacity.
Do you? Because it sounds like you've got quite a strong work ethic, commitment to delivery. Do you tend to hire people in your own sort of mirror image, I guess, that reflect those same values, or actually are you kind of looking to bring in people with different perspectives? It's kind of a hard question, isn't it?
No, it's not. I understand it. I mean, on the work ethic, definitely. I mean, I wouldn't hire someone who I felt is. I mean, they don't have to be. They shouldn't be as hardworking as me for a start. That wouldn't be fair or appropriate. I'm in this position. I get paid to be in this position, and I have to demonstrate that, through leadership and working a bit harder. And I wouldn't necessarily expect someone to work. If I'm working 14-hour days because I have to, I wouldn't expect that person who works for me to work 14-hour days. But I would expect them to work hard. But I don't. On the other side, you didn't quite ask this question, but I think you may have been getting towards it, which is they shouldn't have complementary skills. I mean, they should have, but it's almost pointless duplicating what I'm good at, because I know I'm not good at so many other things. I really do know I'm not good at so many other things. And I have historically hired people working with me who do the things really well that I don't do really well. So it's almost important not to hire the people that do exactly the same thing as well as you, but to do the things that you either don't feel you can do very well or perhaps don't necessarily want to do. And so that's how I've kind of hired in the past, deliberately.
What else have you learnt about hiring and building high-performing finance functions?
What have I learned? Is communication. The best relationships and the best performance I've had with those people I communicate with regularly, and obviously it's in the kind of work that I do in the organisations that I've worked in, they're very distributed globally. So communication isn't necessarily sitting next to someone, physically sitting next to someone day in, day out, but it's virtually sitting next to someone day in, day out. And it's constantly speaking. And that's built the trust that I talked about a second ago. It's built the understanding. It makes sure that things get done quickly. That is really important to me as well. What other qualities? Intelligence. I mean, literal intelligence is really, really important. It is in some aspects of finance, I would say it's a highly intellectual job. It really, really is. I mean, there are things that really require you to really scratch hard to make sure that what you're doing gets you the outcome that you want. You have to go through all the game of chess and make sure that your move, the thing that you're about to do, doesn't sort of have unforeseen consequences. It's really, really important. So that intelligence is important. And people being able to challenge that, people challenging me, is really important. And having really fierce discussions, heated discussions at times, you just have to have them, because that's how you sometimes get the best outcome. So people who can stand up to that, and I can take criticism. I think I'll stand corrected more often than not. And as long as people can take that, then I think that's what I also look for.
How have you tested for that when you're interviewing people?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think intelligence shines out, doesn't it? When you talk to someone for any period of time. Do I test for it? Do I deliberately put sort of IQ tests in front of people? No, I don't do any of that. I know that in some parts of teams that I've worked with, they do literally put them in. They give people a test on the work that they're about to be doing, I tell you what, I'd fail every single one of those if they put that in front of me. But they do that. But that's not necessarily intelligence. That's just, can you do a piece of work that we put in front of you? I've been fortunate. I mean, I've people I think look back on that I work with or I've hired have had that intelligence and the ability to challenge. I haven't deliberately, though. I can't really pinpoint deliberately, consciously questioning someone on their intelligence. It's just something you know. Clearly, if they're not intelligent and I figured it out in an interview, then I'm not going to hire them.
Have you made? It sounds like you've got a good gut for this sort of stuff, but have you made some bad hires along the way as well? And you know, you thought it was all going to work out, and then actually, the person was nothing like you expected at interview.
No. I mean, I'm genuinely. I was looking in the sky, thinking and thinking about the people I have hired, and no, I mean, I can't. I mean, yeah, there might be one. I do think of one, and actually, this person was extremely intelligent, as it turned out. I mean, Oxbridge, but they were intelligent in a way that maybe was more academic than practical. But apart from that one that stands out, I can't think of anyone.
That sounds. I mean, that's a great track record to have over your career, because you know, interviewing is not. It's kind of an art form, isn't it, as much as anything, and just sort of getting a sense for a person. So you must have hired multiple tens of people over the years, if not more.
But I don't think it's that difficult.
Okay.
I mean, it's not just interviewing, is it? It's also you presumably by the time you're interviewing someone, you've already kind of worked out whether they are broadly the right person. So at that stage, you've already the filter's already eliminated. If you've got good people, basically by that stage.
Good. What's your view? So your background is primarily across the sort of TMT space over the years. Another thing that sort of pops up quite a lot to be debated is whether someone needs to have experience in the industry that you're hiring for. And often you see it from employers and job descriptions that, you know, must have 10 years technology experience, must have 10 years retail experience, which is very frustrating for a lot of people. What's your view on that?
I think it's important, actually, but broad experience, I would say, broadly aligned experience. You know, I'll try and give some examples. In technology is so varied. It covers so many different facets. But if you understand what technology is, from my point of view, this is how I see it. If I understand what technology is going to do, what technology has done to change the world, and how influential it is, and how it operates, whether it, particularly on software, then whether it's software X or software Y, whether it's SaaS or whether it's something else, I don't think, generally speaking, you, in a CFO capacity, you need to have experienced it, the exact replica of something that you're about to get into, because I don't think that's important. I think you have to have a sort of desire for it, an interest in it. Could you go from working in a engineering or chemical factory or chemical business to being a CFO in an advertising agency? That could be quite hard, I think, and you know, for all sorts of reasons, personality-wise. The people that you'll be dealing with, the people that they're coming back to you, they wouldn't necessarily understand the language you speak, your thought process, and you wouldn't understand theirs. So I do think it's important to have some alignment, but I think could someone who's worked in television work in advertising? Yes. Could someone who's worked in television work in software? Depends on kind of what kind of TV they've worked in or what kind of advertising they've worked in. But I do think it's as much about your own personal interest as well. Do you understand the business that you're about to get into? If you don't, then probably don't get into it. So I don't think, I think it's okay for people to move from one place, from one industry to the other, but within reason. But there are probably limits.
Mm-hmm. There's obviously been a big theme developing around AI generally. How do you think it's going to impact on, I guess, the finance function broadly, but B, in terms of where industry is going? And we've seen it kind of wipe out some businesses altogether very quickly because of what AI can do in half the time with no people. So where do you think it's headed? How is a finance team going to utilise it, and also where's the industry headed and opportunities as well?
At some point, sooner or later, I can't tell you where on the spectrum, but sooner or later, it will be transformational. And I think this probably goes for industry, the economy as a whole, rather than just finance. I mean, you can read all about it and different views, but one view is that the Industrial Revolution, if you go back in history, didn't wipe out the economy, didn't make millions of people unemployed. It created employment. It created work. It created opportunities that no one could ever have even dreamt existed before. So if you're looking in history, and if you consider this to be some kind of evolution of an industrial revolution, then history might say to you that it's not going to just make the entire population of the world sit at home. It will create opportunities that we haven't even figured out yet. It will certainly result in people doing tasks today that can be done without humans, of course. That's happening everywhere, and that will happen in finance, and that will happen in so many industries. But it will, you have to assume, create opportunities for new revenue streams, for new businesses, for new ways of working that haven't even been contemplated today, that require people to do. But what that is going to require people to do, I guess, is more again, I've used this word a lot, but using their intellect that perhaps for some reason is not captured in AI. I don't know if that's possible, but I'd imagine that's where the future lies. But in finance, there are going to be tasks that are going to get eliminated, but there are going to be tasks in the future that will be created as well. But I know it's very easy for me to say and not actually give you an example of one of those tasks that's going to be created, but you've got to assume that they will.
Cybersecurity and AI relating to that obviously is, again, within a lot of the modern CFOs' remits.
Yeah.
And obviously that threat is now more advanced by the day. The fraud and activity that's going on is becoming more and more advanced. How much is that on your mind as a CFO?
Always constant. It's up. We're all part. Every organisation and every finance department has a requirement to maintain a sort of risk register, and cybersecurity is high up there, very high up there amongst the highest of threats. So there's constant vigilance. I mean, this is very much a technology and IT related issue, but as part of ensuring the safety of the company, any finance director or CFO needs to make sure that all the protections at all times are in place against that. I don't, touch wood, I haven't witnessed or been part of any material damage from this. Hopefully never. But it's definitely one of our biggest threats. Or for anyone, it's one of their biggest threats, particularly for anyone highly involved in technology.
When you've been in the boardroom, and I guess this is a big thing for, again, aspiring CFOs or current CFOs, is the investor relations, investor management, and also stakeholder management with your board. What's been the toughest question you've had from an investor or a board that you've had to deal with in the CFO seat?
Oof. I'm not sure what the toughest question. That's the toughest question I've ever been asked.
Well, I was going to say the toughest question is the one you don't know the answer to, isn't it? So,
I guess the tough question is, it is sometimes that what you've just said. It is. Oh Christ, I don't know the answer. Yeah, you know, it's like, oh shit, he's just asked me a question, and I've learned to sort of be very honest. Where I don't know the answer to questions, I've figured it out pretty quick. You look even more stupid bluffing your way through an answer, rambling on like I am right now, then just saying I don't know. But look, I've heard your question. It's a good question. I've written it down. I'll get back to you. That's a tough question, and sometimes embarrassing. If it's a difficult question that no human could ever have answered on the spot, then that's fine. But if it's a question where, oh Christ, of course I should have known that. Why didn't I prepare for that? That's a bit awkward. Sometimes the tough question is the one where you know the answer. You know the answer, right? But you, particularly in a public company, but you know you can't give that answer because it's privileged information.
Yep.
And again, probably the right answer, the absolute right answer to that question is it's privileged information. I can't tell you. It's not. I'm a very. I like to talk and give out information. I hate not, but when I was a public company CFO, I knew what the limits were. But that's something, and you do get people who press, but they also know the rules as well, and they know they shouldn't be receiving that information. But I wouldn't call it a tough question. It's just you just have to tell people I can't answer it. Sorry.
Is it hard to give bad news to private equity at times as well? Because I guess as the numbers guy, you're often probably the person presenting it, maybe rather than the CEO who's sitting next to you.
Yeah.
Is that quite tough? Because I guess you get the grilling, you're the one delivering the news.
Yeah, it's true. Sometimes. To be fair, to more than fair, the CEO is an incredible human being who has the answers already and is very willing to give the answers in absolute honesty as well, unblemished, unvarnished. This is the answer. I'm not spinning it. This is the answer, and as a finance person, you've got to. Everyone, whether it's in a private equity or a public company, regardless, you're expected to be straight. You're asked a question, what's the answer to that question? Not kind of give me the sales response, not give me a different response. It's a mathematical question, what's the mathematical answer? And then you can give an opinion, and you should give an opinion. It's important that you do express your opinion on something, but it's just be direct, which is probably more than any other function in an organisation. What you're expected to be, really to the point and direct. Don't beat about the bush. Here's a question. What's the answer? And that's the answer. It's black and white, which can be difficult for some people. It's just they love it because at last I just have to say what the answer is, and I don't have to build a story around it. I like sometimes to build a bit of a story around it.
New government got through a lot of big challenges in recent years. Are you optimistic about the future?
Yeah, I think so. It's a tough world out there, not just in the UK but everywhere. But yeah, I voted for this government. I think I knew where they were heading. I think I assumed some of the things that we're now reading about as far as business and taxation and spend are concerned. I think I knew that where they were going when I voted for them. So, and I think it's the right medicine. It is, you can call it that. It might be painful, as we are being told time and time again, but it's necessary, in my opinion. And it's a correction that is needed to happen. So we should. I mean, I'm very supportive of it. I'm very optimistic. I'm reasonably optimistic about the future. Not very, but reasonably optimistic about the future. So I mean, so far, this is everything that they're saying and doing is in line with what I was expecting and voted for.
Great. Well, thanks, Mickey. I think that's everything we need, and you've been fantastic. So really appreciate you taking the time out to join us today. Some fascinating insights as well. So really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. Really appreciate it. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks, Mickey.